The air on the alien planet was thick with tension. The grand palace stood tall, shimmering in the light of two suns, its towering spires glimmering like jewels. Inside the palace, the royal court was in chaos. Word had spread throughout the kingdom. The alien prince had declared his intentions to win the heart of the princess, and the human rival, who had recently arrived from Earth, was not going to back down. The princess, her regal beauty captivating all who laid eyes on her, stood at the balcony, gazing out over the vast kingdom. Her heart was torn. The prince, with his noble bearing, had always been someone she was meant to be with, according to the traditions of her people. But there was something about the human. The way he had arrived on the planet, not as a warrior or prince, but as a mere visitor, with no title or power. Something about his presence was different. It was not just his eyes, full of fire and passion, but the way he treated her like an equal. It was something the prince had never done. The sounds of the court echoed in the grand hall below. The princess could hear the murmurs of the courtiers, the whispers that filled the space with excitement and fear. Today, the challenge would be decided. The prince, determined to claim what he believed was his right, had called for a contest. The rules were simple. Whichever man could prove himself worthy of her heart would win her hand. The princess was caught between two worlds, her duty to her people, who saw the prince as the rightful match for her, and the strange, magnetic pull she felt toward the human. She didn't know how this would end, but she couldn't ignore the stirring in her heart. Down in the arena, the prince stood tall, his armor gleaming in the sunlight. He was a master of combat, trained in every form of battle known to his people. His confidence radiated, and the crowd gathered around, eagerly awaiting the competition. He was used to winning, and today he would claim what he thought was rightfully his. Across the field, the human rival stood, his expression calm but his fists clenched. He was no warrior. He had no special training. All he had was his heart, his fierce love for the princess, and the courage to face the might of the prince. The challenge ahead of him was more than just a fight for love. It was a fight for his very future, and he wasn't about to back down. The arena fell silent as the contest was about to begin. The princess watched from her balcony, her heart racing. She didn't know how this would play out, but she could feel the weight of the decision that was about to unfold. The battle for her heart had begun. Would the prince's strength win the day, or would the human's heart prove stronger? The sun hung low over the arena, casting long shadows across the field as the spectators waited with bated breath. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. The alien prince, Kalen, stood at one end of the arena, his powerful frame encased in gleaming armor that reflected the light in dazzling patterns. His eyes were locked onto the human, Mark, his rival. Every inch of Kalen's posture screamed superiority. He was the chosen one, the destined ruler, and no mere human could stand in his way. Mark, on the other hand, was a stark contrast. He stood with a quiet, focused intensity, his clothes simple and practical. No armor, no royal insignia, just a man who had crossed the stars for one reason: the princess. His heart pounded in his chest, not with fear, but with determination. He knew he was not a warrior by nature, but he had something Kalen could never possess: a genuine love for the princess and a promise to protect her at all costs. The crowd began to murmur, the excitement palpable in the air. The princess, Alara, stood at the balcony above, her heart torn. She could feel the weight of the rivalry, the crushing expectations placed upon her. She had no desire to see them fight, but she knew this was her destiny, a destiny that was now being shaped before her eyes. Let the contest begin. The royal announcer's voice rang out, and the sound of the starting bell echoed through the arena. Immediately, Kalen charged forward, his movements swift and powerful. He swung his sword with precision, each strike a testament to his royal training. The crowd cheered, knowing they were witnessing the might of a true warrior. He was quick, powerful, and relentless. But Mark, despite his lack of experience, was quick to react. He dodged the first few blows, narrowly avoiding the prince's strikes, his body moving more from instinct than skill. Mark's breath was heavy, his muscles aching from the effort of evading Callan's powerful blows. He had no sword, no shield, just a will to survive and the desire to prove himself worthy of Elira's love. He had to fight with everything he had. Callan's eyes narrowed as he saw the human evade him time and time again. A surge of anger pulsed through his veins. "You cannot win, human," he snarled, his voice thick with contempt. "This is not your world." But Mark only looked at him with calm eyes, his determination unwavering. "Maybe not," he said, "but I'm fighting for something real. Something you'll never understand." Elira's heart raced as she watched from the balcony. She couldn't help but feel a strange sense of admiration for Mark. Despite being outmatched, he stood his ground. He wasn't here for glory or power. He was here for her, and that thought made her question everything she had believed about love, duty, and destiny. The fight raged on, and the crowd's excitement grew. The alien prince was stronger, faster, and far more experienced, but Mark was relentless, his spirit unbreakable. The more Callan pushed, the more Mark refused to fall. It wasn't just a fight of strength anymore. It was a battle of wills. The princess could feel the atmosphere shift, the tension mounting. Would the prince's might overwhelm the human, or would Mark's heart and determination prevail? As the two men clashed in the arena, Elira knew that the outcome of this contest would forever change her fate, and the fate of her world. The clash between Callan and Mark intensified with each passing moment. Sparks flew as their weapons collided, the metallic screech echoing throughout the arena. The crowd roared in excitement, but Elira, standing high above them, could hardly bear to watch. Her heart was torn, her emotions a tangled web of confusion, love, and fear. Both men fought for her, but in different ways. Callan's power and royal blood made him a formidable force, while Mark's human determination and heart gave him an unexpected edge. As the fight dragged on, Mark's stamina began to wane. He was no match for the strength and skill of Callan. A blow from the prince's sword caught him across the chest, sending him stumbling backward. The audience gasped in shock. A moment of victory was within Callan's reach, but Mark wasn't done yet. With a sharp intake of breath, he gathered his strength and launched himself forward once more, catching Callan off guard. "You're stubborn, human," Callan sneered, brushing blood from his lip. Mark didn't respond, but there was a fire in his eyes, a fire that Callan had not anticipated. Mark's focus shifted. He had no intention of winning with brute strength. Instead, he focused on Callan's weaknesses, the subtle openings in the prince's defense. As the two continued to clash, Mark realized something. He didn't need to be stronger than Callan, but he needed to outsmart him. Then, a realization hit Mark like a bolt of lightning. They weren't just fighting for Elira's love. They were fighting for the future of two worlds. If Callan won, the princess would be forced into a royal marriage, bound by political obligation, not love. If Mark won, he would have a chance to prove that a human could fight for what was right, that love could transcend boundaries. The stakes were higher than ever. With newfound determination, Mark ducked under another swing of Callan's sword. Using his opponent's momentum against him, Mark jabbed a knee into Callan's side, momentarily throwing him off balance. The prince staggered, and for the first time, he felt the weight of the fight shift. Elira watched in silence, her heart racing. She could see that Mark was not just fighting for her love. He was fighting for the very chance to shape a future where love was not bound by status or power. And for the first time, she felt a flicker of hope in her chest. Mark had no title, no royalty, no crown, but his heart was pure, and it was that heart that made him dangerous. "Enough." The royal announcer's voice boomed, and the crowd fell silent. The fighting stopped for a brief moment, both men heaving for breath. The tension in the air was thick, the weight of the battle hanging over them. It was as if the arena itself had held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Elira's mind raced. The situation was more complicated than she had ever imagined. The choice before her was no longer just about love. It was about destiny, honor, and sacrifice. She had never expected to be at the center of such a battle, but now she understood. This fight was not just about her. It was about a new future, one that could unite two very different worlds. Kalon, his pride wounded and his rage building, turned to Elira, his voice cold and commanding. "This fight is not over, princess. You belong to me." But Mark, despite his exhaustion, stepped forward, his eyes locked on hers with quiet resolve. "No, Elira. You deserve more than to be treated as a prize. You deserve to choose." Elira looked between the two men, one representing the old ways, the other the future. Her heart swelled, torn between duty and love. The choice was hers to make, and the consequences would echo throughout the universe. Would she choose the powerful, royal future offered by Kalon, or would she risk everything and choose the human who had already proven he was willing to fight for her? The battle was far from over, and neither man was willing to let go. But Elira knew this fight was about more than victory. It was about freedom, love, and the power to choose her own fate. The atmosphere in the arena was electric, charged with anticipation. The crowd watched intently as both Kalon and Mark, bruised and battered, awaited the princess's decision. Elira stood frozen, caught between the two men, each one holding a part of her future in their hands. The weight of the moment pressed down on her chest, making it difficult to breathe. Kalon's eyes narrowed, his stance rigid. His pride had been wounded, and he could not fathom losing a battle of honor, especially one that involved his claim to Elira. "You cannot possibly be serious, Elira," he sneered. "This human is not worthy of you. He is nothing compared to what I can offer you. My world, my people, my power. These are things no human can provide." Mark, though weary, met her gaze with determination. "I don't have a kingdom or armies," he said, his voice steady but filled with conviction. "But I can give you something that no throne can offer: freedom. The choice is yours, Elira. You don't have to be bound by bloodlines or royal obligations. You can choose to live your life as you see fit." Elira's heart thundered in her chest. Kalon, the proud prince, represented everything she had been taught to value: power, status, and tradition. But Mark, the human, represented something entirely different. His words echoed in her mind: freedom, love, choice. The very thing she had always longed for, but never thought possible. She had been trained her whole life to accept her role as the future of an alien empire, a role dictated by the whims of her father, her people, and her birthright. But now, everything was changing. She glanced at Mark, whose eyes shone with an intensity that matched her own emotions. He had been nothing but kind and sincere from the moment they met. His struggles had been different from hers, yet in some ways, they were the same. Both of them were fighting against a world that had already decided their futures, but here they stood, fighting for their own choices. Her thoughts raced as she weighed her options. Her people expected her to choose Kalon, to solidify the power of their world, and strengthen the empire's hold over the human colonies. She could secure her future, secure her family's legacy, but at what cost? A life without love, without freedom. Kalon, sensing the indecision in her eyes, stepped forward with an air of finality. "Choose wisely, princess," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "If you refuse me, you will not only defy your bloodline, but also your people. You will become a traitor to your own kind." But Mark wasn't backing down. "You don't need to be a traitor to make your own decisions, Elira. You can choose what's best for you, not for anyone else. Your happiness matters." The silence in the arena was deafening as all eyes remained fixed on Elira. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath, trying to clear the noise from her mind. This wasn't just about love or duty. This was about her future, her identity, her destiny. And for the first time, Elira realized she could choose. She could be more than what her father and her people expected her to be. With one final glance at both men, she stepped forward, her voice barely above a whisper. I choose my own path. The words were a declaration, the start of a new beginning. Her voice rang out, clear and certain. She was no longer a pawn in a battle of power. She was Elira, a woman with the strength to shape her own destiny. Kalen's face twisted with disbelief, his eyes flashing with fury. You've made a mistake, princess. You will regret this. But Mark smiled, stepping closer to her, his gaze softening. No, Elira. You've made the right choice. The crowd held their breath as the tension in the air thickened. Elira's choice had been made, but the consequences were only just beginning. The battle for her heart had shifted from a fight for power to a fight for something much deeper: freedom, love, and the right to define her own future. As the arena doors closed behind them, Elira realized that the real battle was just beginning. She had chosen her path, and now she had to walk it, no matter where it led. But for the first time, she walked with her head held high, knowing that the journey ahead was hers to control. The sun was beginning to set over the distant horizon, casting an orange glow across the barren landscape of the arena. Elira, Mark, and Kalen stood in the silence that followed Elira's bold declaration. The alien prince's anger simmered just below the surface, his fists clenched at his sides as he glared at the human and the princess. He hadn't expected her to defy him, not after everything he had done for her. But this was a different kind of rebellion, one that threatened not only his pride but the very foundation of his world. Mark stepped closer to Elira, his hand brushing against hers. The gesture was small but full of meaning. She could feel the warmth of his touch and the strength in his presence. He wasn't just a human who had come to fight for her heart. He was someone who had stood by her, fought for her freedom, and given her the chance to choose her own path. In that moment, Elira felt a connection with Mark that transcended any barrier of species or status. We should leave, Mark said quietly, his voice steady but firm. This place. It's not where we belong anymore. Let's go somewhere where we can start fresh. Together. Elira hesitated for a moment, still processing everything that had happened. The weight of her decision was heavy on her shoulders. Her whole life had been about duty, about making choices that would benefit her people and her family. But now, everything was different. Mark had shown her a new world, one where choices weren't dictated by birthright or expectations, but by the people you loved and trusted. She looked back at Kalen, who stood in the center of the arena, his expression dark and filled with unspoken words. "And what about him?" she asked, her voice soft but resolute. Kalen's gaze was cold as ice, and he stepped forward, his arrogance still palpable. "Do you think this will be easy, princess?" His words were sharp, cutting through the tension in the air. "You've made a foolish choice. The consequences will not be kind. You will regret this." Elira met his stare, unflinching. "I don't need your approval, Kalen. I've made my choice, and I will live with it, no matter the consequences." Mark placed a hand on her shoulder, offering her silent support. "We'll face whatever comes together, Elira. You don't have to do this alone." Elira nodded, feeling a sense of clarity that she had never known before. She turned away from Kalen and walked toward the exit of the arena, Mark by her side. The doors creaked open, revealing the world beyond, a world full of uncertainty, but also full of possibility. For the first time, Elira felt like she was truly free. Kalen's voice rang out one last time as they walked away. "You think this is over? It's just begun. You'll see. Your people will never accept you." And he spat, his voice full of venom. "He will never truly understand you. You're making a mistake, princess." But Elira didn't look back. She didn't need to hear his words anymore. She had already made her decision, and no one, not even Kalen, could take that away from her. The pair walked into the unknown, knowing they had many obstacles ahead, but their future was theirs to shape. The world that awaited them wasn't the one that had been laid out for her since birth, but it was a world full of choices, and for the first time, Alara realized that the greatest adventure of all was the one that started when you took control of your own destiny. As they disappeared into the setting sun, a new chapter in Alira's life began, one that would test her strength, her love, and her belief in herself. But no matter the challenges ahead, she knew she had made the right choice, and with Mark by her side, she would face them all, ready for whatever came next. The real battle was just beginning. But for the first time, Alara was in control. Alara and Mark ventured farther from the arena, the harsh, metallic world of the alien empire slowly fading behind them. The streets were quiet as they walked, the hum of the city's energy systems the only sound that accompanied their steps. For the first time, Alara felt like she was truly free, though the weight of what she had just done pressed heavily on her heart. She had defied everything her people had taught her, everything her father had expected of her, and now she wasn't sure where the path would lead. Mark sensed the turmoil inside her and reached out to touch her arm gently. "Hey, we'll figure this out," he said softly. "One step at a time." Alara smiled faintly, grateful for his reassurance, but deep down, she knew that the hardest part of this journey had only just begun. She was no longer just the princess of a powerful alien race. She was now the exile, the one who had rejected her people's traditions, their rules, and their expectations. "The hardest part is yet to come," she murmured. "I don't know what to expect from them. My people won't let me go without a fight. They won't just let me walk away." Mark looked ahead, his gaze steady. "Then we'll face it together. I know it's not going to be easy, but you don't have to face it alone anymore. You have me." Alira's heart warmed at his words, but the anxiety remained. She couldn't shake the feeling that everything she had ever known was slipping away. The weight of her crown, the responsibility to her people, and the expectations of her family, all of it had been a heavy burden. But even with that, she had never considered the idea of leaving it behind until now. The next few hours passed in a blur. They found shelter in a small, dimly lit building on the outskirts of the city. It was nothing like the grand palace Alara had grown up in, but it was a safe haven. For now, Mark had insisted they rest before making any major decisions about what to do next. As they sat together in the quiet of the room, Alira's thoughts raced. She could still hear Kalen's voice echoing in her mind, warning her that her choice would lead to nothing but regret. But even his words seemed hollow now. She was no longer bound by the expectations of her people, and while the future was uncertain, Alara knew she had to create her own path. "You're thinking too much," Mark said, his voice pulling her out of her thoughts. "We'll take this one step at a time, Alara. But you have to remember that you're not just running away. You're choosing something better. A future where you're free to be who you are, without the chains of your past." She looked at him, his words sinking in. For the first time since she had made her choice, Alara allowed herself to truly believe that there was a future for her, one she could shape on her own terms. "Maybe you're right," she said softly, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. "Maybe it's time to stop looking back and start looking forward." Mark smiled, his eyes filled with determination. "We'll figure this out together, and no matter what happens, I'll be here. You don't have to do this alone." Just then, the sound of footsteps approaching echoed through the building. Alira's senses went on high alert, her body tensing. Who could it be? Had they been found so soon? Mark stood and moved toward the door, motioning for Alara to stay behind him. "I'll check it out," he whispered, his expression serious. Alara watched, her heart racing, as he stepped cautiously to the entrance. The door creaked open slightly, and she could hear muffled voices from outside. For a moment, the world seemed to stand still. Was it Kalen, or someone else looking for her? The silence seemed endless, but then Mark's voice broke through the stillness. "It's okay," he called back to her, a note of relief in his tone. "It's not who we thought it was. Someone's here to help." Alira's breath caught in her throat. Who could it be? And why had they come? As the door fully opened, she saw a figure emerge from the shadows. A familiar face. It was a woman, tall and commanding, with striking features that seemed almost regal. She stepped forward, her eyes locking with Elira's, a knowing smile playing on her lips. "I'm here to offer you a choice, princess," the woman said, her voice smooth and confident. "A new beginning, if you're ready to take it." Elira blinked in surprise. She had no idea who this woman was, but something about her presence felt powerful, as though she had the answers to the questions Elira hadn't yet known to ask. And so, with the door to the unknown wide open before her, Elira stood, her heart beating with a mixture of fear and excitement. She had chosen to leave her old life behind, but now, it seemed like the universe was giving her a chance to reshape her future once more. The next chapter was beginning, and there was no turning back. "Tell me more," Elira said, her voice steady, determined. The adventure was only just beginning. The mysterious woman stepped fully into the room, her presence commanding yet calm. She looked Elira over, as though weighing her worth, but her smile remained friendly, even reassuring. Mark stood close by, his protective instincts kicking in, but Elira felt no threat from the stranger. Instead, she felt a strange sense of relief, as if fate had delivered her to this moment for a reason. "I know what you're thinking," the woman began, her voice steady and warm. "You've just turned your back on everything you've known. You might be feeling uncertain about what lies ahead. But, princess, sometimes the greatest journey begins when we take that first step into the unknown." Elira exchanged a glance with Mark. He gave her a small nod, as though telling her that whatever came next, they would face it together. She took a deep breath, her fingers curling around his, her heart racing with anticipation. "Who are you?" Elira asked, trying to keep her voice even. "And why are you here?" The woman's smile widened slightly. "My name is Celine," she said, "and I come from a place far beyond your world, a place where the impossible is not only possible, but the foundation of life itself. You have a choice to make, princess. You can continue running from your past, or you can come with me and step into a future full of endless possibilities. A future where you're not bound by your bloodline or your past mistakes." Elira felt a jolt of excitement mixed with uncertainty. She had thought she was alone in this new world, that her past would always haunt her, no matter how far she ran. But this woman, this mysterious Celine, was offering her something different, a chance to break free, not just from her past, but from everything she had ever known. Mark stepped closer to Elira, his presence steady and comforting. "What kind of future are you offering her?" he asked, his tone cautious but curious. Celine turned to him, her eyes assessing him for a moment before she spoke. "The kind of future where your past doesn't define you, where your choices shape your destiny, not your bloodline or your history. I have the power to give you both that choice." She looked back at Elira, her gaze softening. "But it's a path that's not for the faint of heart. It's full of danger, uncertainty, and sacrifice, but it also holds the potential for greatness, if you're willing to take that first step." Elira's mind spun with possibilities. She could continue running, hiding from the consequences of her decision, or she could step into the unknown and embrace whatever came next. Her heart told her that it was time for her to take control of her own fate, to stop letting her past define her. But the road ahead wasn't going to be easy, and there were no guarantees. "I'm ready," Elira said finally, her voice steady, but her heart racing with the weight of her decision. She turned to Mark, her eyes filled with determination. "We're ready." Mark looked at her, his expression serious but full of support. "Wherever you go, Elira, I'll follow. I don't care what's out there. As long as we're together, I'll face it with you." Celine nodded approvingly, the faintest trace of a smile on her lips. "Good," she said. "Then let's go. Your journey begins now." With that, the woman turned and led them through the door and into the unknown. As they walked away from the dimly lit shelter, the world outside seemed to stretch before them like an endless horizon, full of promises and challenges, both known and unknown. Elira's heart pounded in her chest, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from the excitement of knowing that she was finally making her own choices, taking control of her life in a way she never had before. She wasn't running anymore. She wasn't hiding. She was stepping into her future, and nothing could hold her back. The stars above them twinkled brightly, as if watching over them, guiding them toward whatever lay ahead. And for the first time, Elira didn't feel afraid. She felt powerful, ready to face whatever came her way. The real adventure was only just beginning. And with Mark by her side and Celine leading them into the unknown, Elira knew that she was finally on the path to becoming the person she was always meant to be. The choice had been made, and now there was no turning back.